my wife was fine. She was doing her PhD, but my son really loved Netherlands. That's why he was asking me, why am I coming back? Why can't I decline the Safaricom role? And I told him that there are some roles you don't decline. so
Again, I'll say the tagline on this show is, you truly never know people until you take the time out to get to know people. For those of you who've been following us, the journey this far, I want you to know the behind the scenes is that we were not supposed to have all this time. So first and foremost, we are very grateful that Peter is still sitting here, candidly sharing his story, because it is through sharing his stories that I'm sure a lot of you are getting value, if not all of you. In fact, all of you are getting value. So this is the last run that we're doing, because we've got to respect his time, and we'll do a hard stop. So yes, Nigeria, you leave. Again, I'll ask you, what's the goal? Or does this opportunity now just hitting you as you flow in the river?
Yeah, so I remember that Nigeria was my second CEO role. So now you are thinking, you're already in the rhythm of running businesses. So it's the type of role that you want. So I had been involved in a number of, I would say, turnaround role, like the Nigeria one there was a lot of challenges that I needed to turn around. So now I wanted a more kind of traditional CEO role, but also stable. So
were you successful in Nigeria? Did you
very
eat
successful,
the
extremely successful, and you can always tell in the way that the market was rated, the employees and so on and so forth. But so I was very successful, and I was rated very well. In the ratings, actually, my last year in Nigeria was the highest rating I had.
Wow!
So which is good, but now in this, so I was supposed to be in Nigeria for 4 years, but this role that I got, the Continental Europe role, came in a year earlier. So therefore, I left Nigeria to go and work out of Amsterdam and look after the whole of the continent.
Wow.
For Diageo. And so I was the most senior person based out of Amsterdam. And I was looking after all the businesses from Russia and Ukraine. So when the war started, I remember my days in visiting Moscow, in visiting Kiev, to Northern Europe, so the Scandinavian, to kind of Benelux, so Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, to the south, the middle, which is the German countries, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, all the way to the Iberia, which is Spain and Portugal, so to the Mediterranean, which is all the kind of Italy and
how many markets?
And Greece. If you add all of them, it was about core continental Europe. It was probably about 15. But if you add the Eastern Europe, then it made them close to just slightly more than 45.
Wow.
But it is the whole of Eastern Europe was one market. And then I had Mediterranean as one market, Iberia as one market, Central Europe as one market, Northern Europe as one market. And then Russia was part of the Eastern Europe. So very different role, very different product. It's no longer Guinness. It is spirits and high-end spirits, because of course the income levels are high, and it is big business for Diageo.
Like, give me an example of a product.
Mostly like whiskies, Johnny Walker.
Okay.
Yeah, all the spirits in whiskey, Johnny Walker, all the whiskey range, including Johnny Walker. Across all categories, gins, so all the gins, Tanqueray, Gordon's, vodkas, Ciroc, Ketel One, Smirnoff, all the categories.
Wow.
The Diageo is a leader other than in cognac. Yeah, and then also Guinness. Guinness was about 10% of the business, and whiskey was about a third of the business. So it was a very different experience, because it's an internal business, so it wasn't a listed business. It is owned directly by within through the Diageo channels, and therefore it was a more, although it was a large business, it was a more commercial business. And then you kind of work with the rest of the European. You kind of source the whiskey from Scotland and then Guinness from Ireland. You are used to producing. Now you are only marketing and distribution, but you have end-to-end accountability, which was good. And this is the time I'm saying, look, I was still a minority in a large European market. So by that time, it was no longer kind of conscious in my consciousness. And I remember actually Diageo was very good in doing all this diversity and inclusion and dealing with, and it started even when even earlier, even with PwC, we did a lot of work around unconscious bias. And a lot of the large organizations have actually done that. But nowadays it doesn't bother me in terms of being different or actually being the only African or whatever. I was the first African to be appointed to run a business out of Africa, and that large business, because it was a massive
That
business.
is massive.
Yeah, and then that allowed us to travel. So family, so my son we were living in Den Haag, in The Hague, in an international school. So it's a very nice, Netherlands is a very nice country for families, for expats. It's very welcoming. The Dutch don't worry about what you're up to. The system works, the trains work. It was a very good experience, and my son loved it. And my wife was fine. She was doing a PhD, but my son really loved Netherlands. That's why he was asking me, why am I coming back? Why can't I decline the Safaricom role? And I told him that there are some roles you don't decline. But I think it was when now the kind of headhunting, and I eventually worked through the headhunter to get the Safaricom role, an interview, and
when you got a phone call,
yes,
or an email or whatever communication, I know this one probably came as a vocal voice call,
yes,
and it was telling you are being considered for the Safaricom role as CEO. What did you think?
So let me be a bit more kind of what's called practical.
Okay.
These roles don't just show up.
Yes. Okay.
So first, the headhunter will come to you and say, "There's a role that I'm looking at that I think could be of interest to you." And this is a headhunter who knew me. I mean, generally, headhunters will not come for those types of roles if they don't know the candidate.
Yes.
But knew me for different reasons, and also knew me because I was running businesses that he had been involved in, that kind of thing. And so now you start the process. These processes don't take a month; they take a long time. So it isn't one of those. Oh yeah, you are now called.
And of course.
And then there are some markers that tell you whether you're on the right track, like coming to see the board, all that stuff. So the board interview happens, but also physically coming to see the board.
But how do you feel when you first hear this? Are you?
So eventually, when it lands that now you have the role, of course, you now know that it's no longer theory now. It's now, and frankly, if you ask me, given the types of roles that I have had been involved in, if I was to come back, otherwise I would have gone to probably another Diageo role. If I was to come back, probably Safaricom would have been one of the very few roles that I would have come to.
Given the level that you're risen to.
Given the level that I was already operating in. But still, Safaricom is a special business and a special company that, regardless of whether you have gone through the interviews, once you get the role, now you realize, although probably you realize now. In fact, I remember telling the headhunter, now I just go and I'll drive myself and all these things. Telling me, just drive yourself as much as you want in Europe, because you are likely your driving yourself will end at the airport. And actually, you know, and I remember my wife telling me, you need to sort out your social media. And I tell this to them. Sometimes she doesn't like it, but I'll tell it on this one. I never tell it externally. I tell it in private, but I'll tell it. She told me, because I'm always on LinkedIn, I was on Facebook, I was on all these things. She told me, you need to deal with this thing. When this thing is announced, you'll have a problem. And I was wondering, why is my wife disturbing me about this stuff? You know, the way sometimes men are stubborn.
Yeah.
So then one time I was traveling from Germany, and I was coming from visiting the market, and I was sitting, and I think our flight was delayed. And I said, Peter, let's stop being stubborn. Just deal with this thing that you are being told. That's why I told you, spouses can advise you. So I took myself out of that, made them either private or actually there are some I exited. So on the day that I was announced, and it was the headline, and I think I remember the headline was Starehe Boy becomes CEO of Safaricom. You know, there's this strip that happened at the top here. So the headline is there. And of course, there's a picture. The strip up here, the picture that was there was my wife's picture for her 40th birthday, which was many years ago in Ghana. And me, I was nowhere. I was not in any social media. I went to her and I laughed at her. I said, now, look. You advised me, but you didn't advise yourself. Up to now, I still make fun of her. But that was very good advice because it allowed the papers to focus on not stuff they will find, but actually that they are focusing on me as a person. You get what I mean? And actually, luckily, the picture they took was a fantastic picture. One of her best. So she said, at least they have gotten a good picture. You know, so it was.
Did you understand the magnitude of the company? Listen. You were continental in Europe.
Yeah, I was in Nigeria.
Yes, you were in Nigeria. You are, but the way you've said Safaricom is a special company, and maybe I'm biased because I'm in Kenya. Maybe I see it very differently. The magnitude and the size and the impact of the company. Did you feel that way?
So I knew this was a big appointment. But if you think about the dimensions of transition that I've always talked about, I was coming back to home country. That's a transition because you are bringing family back home. It's not easy. First of all, you need to live somewhere, all these things. Your son, our son was going to come to school. I never had school in Kenya, really. Second, I had been CEO for long. So that was not a transition from a role standpoint. But I was going to be CEO of a company that is very public and very visible and very large. And more importantly, it's a company that also has shareholding of government, of Vodacom and so on. So the shareholding structure, listed is one thing I had already been used to it. But actually the shareholding structure also brought in a very different dimension, dealing with government directly as a shareholder. Not as a regulator or all these things as a shareholder. I was very used to regulated business because alcohol is regulated everywhere. And then the third thing is that socially, Safaricom is present and M-PESA is present, impact-wise, foundation and all that stuff. So I kind of knew, but you still never realized, just based on my LinkedIn, the numbers that went in there, I can't even, and I never had that kind of number, but they were just kind of looking, where does this, almost like it's not available socially anywhere. And then luckily because I had been away for a while, they had kept the professional side of relationship, but the media didn't actually. Some of the senior people in media knew me because of my EABL days. But a lot of the journalists actually kind of didn't. So they were just trying to find out how. But I always, even when I appoint people in Safaricom, I tell them, you do not realize just how big the appointment is until the announcement happened. And then they still underestimate. Even me, I underestimated. But because I was away, remember it was announced months before I came.
Okay.
So it was
And
easier.
when is it announced in?
It was announced in October, and
Of
I
what
only
year?
came in 2019.
19.
And I only came in April. I only joined 1st of April.
2020.
2020. What happened is,
yeah.
happened is that they realized that if they didn't announce, it would leak. And therefore they had to announce also on the Diageo side. So you announce it early, and then I was giving notice. I needed to give notice and work through. Not give notice, but work through so that there's enough handover. I left mid-February and then had to take time off. Because I wanted to take time off. I wanted many months, of course. That's never possible. and then
And this is telco.
but yes, sorry.
I'm saying, and you're coming now. You're even switching.
Yes. So then there's an industry transition. So that was another dimension: technology and industry transition. So I knew that the three things I needed to pay attention is settling family, the whole stakeholder relationship, including the public and the government, and then it's a new industry. Those three. Not the functional CEO role, not the listed business element. All those elements I was familiar with, and not the commercial elements, but more the others. And then I was also coming in at a time when we had lost a CEO. Michael Joseph was acting. So there's a lot of dynamics. And then eventually when I showed up, COVID had been declared. I went to Asia during transition, I went to Asia to take a break. Then I went to climb Kilimanjaro. Then I came back. When I was coming down, my wife sent me a text and told me the country's about to be locked down. Actually, they have announced they closed the airports on Thursday. Luckily, we had come back from climbing on Monday. So the guys came to pick me up at the and we came by road because I didn't want to risk coming through the airport. And then you can imagine the headline that new CEO quarantined. to not have been a very good headline, but so we came by road, and then you get those home quarantine, isn't it? In any case, everyone was at home, so there was no implication. So you get the paperwork at the airport. At the border, and then we drove to home, and then worked. I had not seen my team. Some of my team, I had seen some of them in February, March when I came back from Europe. Actually, family came in December so that my son could go to school from January, and then I started seeing some of the people. So I'd seen a couple of my exco, but I was going to meet most of them in April, but because of COVID, I was only seeing them on Zoom. So it was a transition with the team. People are not used. They're used to speaking in the room, in the corridor. But the advantage with crisis, crisis is not great, but one big advantage, and I've always learned, it brings people together. So the one thing that crisis allowed me to do, people won't give you fluffy stories. They'll tell you, here it is. You get what I mean? Because they know there's a crisis. So therefore, they are not going to go around circles. Even when you are getting into a new business, people will go around circles and all that. But because of the crisis, we are meeting daily. We had a morning call every day at 8 a.m. and saying what's going on. We did so much during that period that people don't realize. We supported the ministry with a care center. All the people who are calling to talk to individuals about the COVID was managed by us, and then we would be routed to a ministry's group of doctors. So we are the ones who manage that whole piece with the Ministry of Health. The country didn't realize, but we did that. The second thing is we were involved with all these masks buying and distribution. Remember, the third thing is we had zero rating of transactions for M-PESA for almost 9 months.
Yeah.
And then one of the other things we realized is people are at home. They want connectivity. So we upgraded our network during 2020. We had about 50% coverage of 4G at the beginning of 2020. By the end of the year, we had more than 90%. So the work, the actual physical construction and actually upgrade of the network happened during COVID. So when you said, what can you do in a crisis? Actually, that crisis galvanized the things that we could do, and we did them at half the speed. I mean, half the time that we would take previously. And also the other thing is we took advantage of the fact that the organization is very strong. You realize how important it is to have strong organizations during crisis because they show up for the country. Yeah.
I'm trying to find out. So, I mean, you're being hit left, right, and center as a new CEO. How do you integrate yourself to the team? Or how is that done? Because I'm sure very many people didn't know you.
Didn't know me.
Yes, you're not. And then number two, you're coming after the legacy of Bob, who from a public figure was this super life persona. You get?
Yeah.
And of course, there's always going to be that comparison between you and him. How are you? And then there's COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out how you first and foremost integrating yourself into this team as the head.